Assalamu alaikum. This is Hena Zuberi, and you're watching Muslim Network News. Our top story today is about America's gun crisis. America is awash in gun debts. The latest news on this grim crisis comes from Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Austin, Texas. On Sunday morning, 3 people were killed and at least 3 injured at a busy Kenosha County bar. The shooter was arrested after a 100-officer manhunt. Hours later, in Austin, Texas, a former sheriff's deputy shot 3 people who later died. As of Friday, there have been more than 147 mass shootings in the United States since January 1st alone. So far this year, there have been over 117 gunshot deaths per day. The weapons that inflict this death toll are mostly purchased legally, and incidents primarily occur in households with a gun. About 40% of Americans say that they or someone in their household owns a gun. In 2018, a report from the Switzerland based Small Arms Survey estimates that American civilians own 393 million guns, ranking the United States #1 in the firearms per capita range. Gun purchases hit historic heights during the COVID-19 pandemic and the 2020 presidential election. Gun sales last August alone exceeded sales for the entirety of 2019, according to the Small Arms Analytics and Forecasting consulting firm. In immigration news, former United States President George W. Bush is calling on Congress to tone down the harsh rhetoric on immigration. In an interview with Norah O'Donnell on CBS Sunday Morning, he said he wants to set a tone that is more respectful of immigrants and leads to a meaningful immigration reform. It was an argument he also made in an op ed piece published in the Washington Post last Friday. In that, he called for bipartisan action on several immigration measures. One of those is a pathway to citizenship for some of the 12 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. During the second term of his presidency, between 2004 and 2008, Bush had pushed for an immigration reform bill that ultimately stalled in Senate. America First Caucus is dead on birth. Former Republican Speaker of the House, John Boehner of Ohio, denounced plan to establish an anti-immigrant and nativist America First Caucus. The idea is being spearheaded by far-right conspiracy theorist Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Republican who was elected representative for Georgia's 14th congressional district last year. Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, Boehner said that Anglo-Saxon caucus is one of the nuttiest things he has ever seen and called on members of the GOP to denounce it. He also said that America has been the world's giant melting pot for the last 200 years. Boehner said that his greatest regret as Speaker was not reaching out and reaching a deal with former President Barack Obama to reform the U.S. immigration system. Greene campaigned in the 2020 election as a devoted supporter of former President Donald Trump and ran on the slogan, "Save America, Stop Socialism." She's been the center of controversy since before her election to the House due to her past support for the anti-Semitic QAnon conspiracy theory. Her comments on Black people, Muslims, and Jews have been denounced by the Republican House leaders. China and the United States have agreed to work together on tackling climate change. The move comes after several meetings between Chinese climate envoy Xi Jinping and his U.S. counterpart John Kerry in Shanghai last week. It also leads to President Joe Biden's virtual climate summit this week, which will be attended by China. A statement by the United States Department of State said that two nations are committed to cooperating with each other and with other countries to tackle climate crisis, which must be addressed with the seriousness and urgency that it demands. Kerry and Genoa agreed on specific actions to reduce emissions. They also committed to strengthening implementation of the Paris Agreement, which limits the global average temperature increase to well below 2 degrees Celsius. The initiative marks a major shift from the era of climate change denial under the leadership of former United States President Donald Trump. Now, a story that concerns many Muslims. Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan wants Western governments to criminalize insulting remarks against Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said he wants offenders to be treated in the same manner as those that deny the Holocaust. Khan spoke after violent protests demanding the expulsion of the country's French ambassador took place in Lahore. This was after France published blasphemous cartoons depicting the beloved prophet. The Tehreek-e-Labbaik Party, or TLP, protested on Monday shortly after Pakistani authorities arrested their leader, Saad Rizvi. Defending the arrest, they said Rizvi was planning to march onto the country's capital of Islamabad with thousands of supporters. Their plan was to besiege the capital to pressure the government to expel the French ambassador. Thousands of angry protesters blocked key highways, causing traffic jams and paralyzing business and daily life for 3 days. Attempts to disperse the protesters sparked violent crashes that killed 4 policemen and injured 600 others. The demonstrators were eventually dispersed, but the unprecedented direct attacks on police provoked the government Thursday to outlaw the TLP for indulging in quote unquote terrorist attacks against the state. Across the border, Pakistan is continuing its efforts to broker peace in Afghanistan. In a phone call yesterday, foreign ministers of the two countries were optimistic about the outcome of the upcoming Istanbul conference. During the conversation, Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and his Afghan counterpart Muhammad Hanif Atmar discussed progress on the dialogue which aims to bring an end to decades-long conflict in the war-torn country. In December 2018, Islamabad arranged direct talks between Washington and the Taliban, paving the way for the 2020 peace deal. Pakistan wields considerable influence over the Taliban and welcomed the forthcoming Afghan Peace Summit in Istanbul, which is an important opportunity for Afghan leaders to make progress towards a political state settlement. America plans to remove troops starting May 1st after 2 decades of war. NATO allies agreed on the withdrawal plan in coordination with the United States. Afghanistan has endured 4 decades of war, starting with the 1979 occupation of the country by the former Soviet Union. Now, back in the United States, an Arizona professor accused of teaching anti Islamic material will receive a settlement of $155,000. Professor Nicholas Damask reached the settlement with the Maricopa Community College District. The professor sent the district a notice of claim last October after a lawsuit against him, and the college was dismissed. The claim says that the professor's reputation, as well as his and his family's safety, were jeopardized when the district failed to publicly defend his academic freedom. Last spring, Damask, who was teaching an online world politics course, posted 3 questions in a quiz that led to the lawsuit. He had included controversial Islamophobic content. A student in the class, Muhammad Sabra, and others who later saw the quiz questions posted online said that they implied that the religion of Islam encourages terrorism. This led Sabra and the Arizona chapter of the Council of American Islamic Relations to file a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court. They asked that the college and Damas stop teaching materials on the topic until they do not have the primary effect of disproving of Islam. A judge dismissed the lawsuit last August, saying Damascus' course did not inhibit the students' personal worship in any way. A remarkable achievement has been made on Mars. The Ingenuity helicopter that was attached to the Perseverance rover has successfully completed its historic flight on Mars and safely landed back on the surface. According to NASA, the first powered controlled flight on another planet took place at 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time. The chopper autonomously flew through the thin Martian air atmosphere with no help from its team on Earth. Mimi Ong, Ingenuity project manager at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, said human beings have flown a rotorcraft on another planet. The 4-pound helicopter spun up in its two 4-foot blades, rose up 10 feet, and flew for 40 seconds. It hovered, took a photo, and touched back down on Mars. Ingenuity could fly up to 4 more times over the coming weeks. In a third train accident of the month in Egypt, more than 100 people were killed and injured. Egypt Railways is the second largest in the world and the first in Africa and the Middle East. More details in this report by Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk.
Egypt has faced several train accidents this year. This month alone, in a third accident, 11 were killed and another 100 injured. The most recent incident raised safety concerns in the country, given similar accidents occurring earlier this year. A passenger train derailed in the city of Alibiya, Egypt on April 18, 2021. The train was headed from Cairo to the city of Mansoura and derailed about 40 kilometers north of Cairo. The Egyptian National Railway said the cause of the accident is still being investigated. More than 50 ambulances carried the injured to 3 hospitals in the province, the health ministry reported. Egyptians on social media are calling on the transportation minister, Kamal El-Wazir, to resign. The minister has rejected their requests and said that he would continue working on developing the aging rail network.
Our special Ramadan report today is about Syrian refugees. While the world may have forgotten them, Syrians constitute the largest number of refugees in the world. Here is a report by Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk about Syrian refugees and their Ramadan.
In the midst of ruins, iftar meal during Ramadan is bringing Syrian refugees together. Millions of Syrians are displaced in refugee camps around the world. Here in Al-Atarib district inside Syria, dozens of families are breaking fast in the middle of their destroyed neighborhood.
Thank God this is a great initiative. We're all gathered here. This is the first time we all meet after the enormous destruction in the city of Atarib caused by the ferocious bombardment.
Organizers say the iftar showed how life used to be before the conflict and the fears of COVID-19 settled in.
After
life slowly began returning to normal in the city of Atareb, and following the return of some of the residents to this great city, we decided the Together Initiative, working with the Civil Defense Forces, to prepare this group iftar meal. The Civil Defense Forces helped us. We disinfected this area and laid some mats on the ground. We wanted to send a message from among the rubble that we are steadfast. God willing, we will transform the destruction caused by Bashar al-Assad into life and hope.
Gade Mustafa is a mother of 6, living in a camp in Idlib. Breaking her fast far away from her home, she says, "We are far from our family and relatives. I don't know anyone from my village in this camp. I am alone." Although hundreds of thousands of Syrians have been killed, and more than 10 million displaced, no amount of rubble or violence could stop a community in Syria from breaking bread together to end their Ramadan fast.
Coming up next after the break will be an in-depth analysis on the recent situation in Northern Ireland. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
So it's nothing extraordinary what we do. It's just a human to human, like brothers to brothers and sisters to sisters. Nothing else, nothing more.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
back. Violence erupted on the streets of Belfast in Northern Ireland during the 23rd anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement between Ireland and the United Kingdom. The riots started with mostly younger people taking part, while older people joining in later. Pro-British Protestant Unionists fear that their home is drifting away from Britain in the new realities of a post-Brexit world. For in-depth analysis, let's go to Chicago to Dr. Amina Al-Din.
Thank you, Hena Zuberi. This is Dr. Amina Al-Din. We're talking with David Kitching, who is a political analyst and a commentator in research and managing director of Baseline Strategy over in Ireland. Are you in Belfast? And welcome, David.
Thank you very much. No, I'm based in Dublin.
Okay. Well, so many things are happening in Ireland, and I don't know if it's happening all over Ireland or if it's predominantly centered in Belfast. But I thought before we get into what's happening today, to give our viewers a little bit of background so we can come up to snuff. Because the last thing we've seen of Ireland, of course, is our ex-president's golf courses. So could you bring up we're going to bring up a map so that our audience can get a little picture of the land. And if you would just start maybe a little bit before, let's say 25 years ago.
Okay, so as with lots of things in Ireland, this comes with a long history. So when you're looking at the map there, you see that Ireland is divided into two jurisdictions. Now, this has been the case since the War of Independence, which was 100 years ago. And after that, the northern part remained part of the United Kingdom. But there remained a large portion of the population in Northern Ireland which wanted to unify with the rest of Ireland. And over the years, there were issues around civil rights of that portion of the population. And there was ultimately a conflict from the late 60s until the late 90s. So 23 years ago, like you identified, we had the Good Friday Agreement, which was a peace agreement ratified by referendum in Northern Ireland and in the Republic.
Well, who needs to make peace?
So the population within Northern Ireland was divided between this. The political terms are unionist and loyalist, those who want to remain in the United Kingdom, and nationalist or Republican who wanted to reunify with Ireland. Now, people often use the religious denominations to describe the conflict. In my opinion, this is not a correct political description because ultimately they weren't arguing over religion as such, but that was often the dividing factor, and there was a level of sectarianism within this. Essentially, the peace agreement happened in 1998. So the agreement had an east-west element, so that's between Ireland and the United Kingdom, a north-south element, so between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and then the internal element, so between the communities. And the executive that they have, the government that they have within the region of Northern Ireland, is a power-sharing executive whereby it's mandatory that there is representation of both communities and they govern together.
Did they do that during the EU?
Yes, and in fact, the fact that both Ireland and the UK were members of the European Union was very helpful to securing a peace agreement. This isn't often given sufficient credit, but the reality is that the European Union as a project thrives off pooling sovereignty. So you don't have this old-fashioned hard border version of sovereignty. It's where you pool sovereignty and you pool resources. And it means that borders ultimately don't matter as much. And that meant that it was far easier for there to be complete free movement, a same customs union, a single market between Ireland and the UK. And you didn't have this.
What you're describing now is how people can live in Ireland, work in Britain, and vice versa.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And the reality of the last few years has been that with the referendum in the UK to leave the EU, so Brexit as it's become known, this has brought up a lot of difficult issues and questions around where a border should be, because as the UK government has gone for this more extreme version of Brexit, so leaving the single market and customs union.
Are you talking about the border between Ireland, Northern Ireland, and the UK, or borders inside of Ireland?
So this is what's come to pass in the last in the last year, where there was a protocol agreed whereby the UK would leave the single market and customs union of the European Union, but Northern Ireland would remain within the single market for the purposes of goods and services. And this has caused a great degree of anxiety amongst the unionist community in Northern Ireland, who feel that it dilutes their relationship with the rest of the United Kingdom. Whereas, from the nationalist community's point of view, the Irish community's point of view, if the border had been solidified and hardened between Northern Ireland and the Republic, this would have also undermined the peace agreement, because part of the peace agreement was that people could be citizens of their country of choice between the UK or Ireland, or even both. It's the idea that identity and nationality became softened so that it would remove it as a source of conflict. But of course, Brexit being it's a nationalist project in its own right, that's hardened questions of identity and nationality once again. And
when you say identity and nationality, what are you actually pointing to? They know they're Irish, even though they're Brits living in Ireland. I assume that they identify as Brits living in Ireland and vice versa. When you're talking about identity, what are you talking about?
So I suppose people who identify as unionist or loyalist,
okay.
They don't necessarily identify as Irish. They might recognize that they live on the island of Ireland, but they don't identify as Irish.
Oh.
And so this is, and I suppose when you're looking at the events of the last couple of weeks, where there's been unrest in Belfast and in Derry and in a number of other towns in Northern Ireland, you're also looking at one of the more marginalized communities within the broader unionist community.
What do you mean that? Say more about that.
So I suppose when you look at what's happening across the industrialized world in the last few decades, you do see communities that once upon a time had a decent industrial base, had access to jobs and decent incomes, and these have been eroded. So you'd have seen it in Europe with maybe greater polarization and the growth of the far right. You'd have seen it in North America also, of course, and this has happened in Northern Ireland too. But the peculiar issue with Northern Ireland is that there was a difference in how each community engaged with the old industrial economy. So during the years when there was unionist domination, so from partition in 1920-21 up until the 1970s, there was a sort of a favoritism shown within a lot of the big industrial jobs towards people from the unionist community. But since there was this industrial decline at the same time as there was an improvement in the position of people from the nationalist community in terms of civil rights, etc., people from the nationalist community have shown greater social mobility in the years since, because there was a greater there's a greater onus upon them to try and find access to other employment through education or through the service sector as society changed. So it's been, I suppose, something of a double whammy for a lot of people in deprived loyalist areas, where the industrial base has been eroded and they've been left behind like those other communities in post-industrial areas, at the same time as a community with whom they were often in competition has moved forward and has shown greater social mobility than they have. So there are all sorts of issues of social class, of sectarianism mixing in with each other, and of nationality, of course, and nationalism.
Well, what did Brexit do? Did it heighten one side and not the other's ability to move ahead or to get better jobs? Or, I mean, for us sitting on this side of the pond, Brexit was a mess. we didn't understand much about what was going on. And I think really the news emphasized things like immigration and people's ability to cross borders for work. They didn't talk much about trade, and so therefore we didn't think about factories and this is a seafaring nation, literally. You know, so what did Brexit do?
Well, one of the most pointed and correct things you said there is that Brexit is a mess. You know, it's an utter mess,
Yeah.
and you're correct. They did focus on issues around immigration within the British context, so the island of Great Britain. However, throughout all of this, there were stakeholders in Ireland and elsewhere who said again and again, this is going to cause problems in Northern Ireland. You know,
Right.
if you put a hard border between North and South on the island of Ireland, the original fear was that there would be backlash amongst Irish Republicans. So the descendants of the IRA or other groups like this. But as things have turned out, the way negotiations have gone, again, loyalist communities feel like they've been left behind, and they've faced a number of different people and organizations who they feel have let them down or who have taken advantage. So Boris Johnson, the current British Prime Minister, he made all sorts of promises to Northern Irish unionists that their position within the UK would be protected, that they would not be left behind, that there would not be a border on the Irish Sea, so between them and the rest of the UK. Now he went back on these because he prioritized other issues around trade and access to markets and things like this, and so they feel aggrieved. I'm sorry.
I said, and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also, in some respects, the pandemic has confused the situation because effectively it's masked some of the impacts of Brexit because there's a level of disarray across the world because of the pandemic, whereas the economic impact of Brexit is not as readily apparent to analysts within the UK at the moment. But ultimately, it's going to cause further damage, and even say within Belfast, they lost a very substantial employer in Bombardier, which again employed predominantly people within the unionist community or within loyalist areas in Belfast. These were from communities that built the Titanic.
I interrupt you, but we have about 2 minutes left. For us who don't get to see you on our news, give us what would you like to leave us with?
So I guess I'd like to leave you with a message that when it comes to political leadership, there's always an onus to look at those communities that can be affected and that can be left behind by a particular decision. Now, the Brexiteers within Great Britain did not think about the consequences for communities such as these and the potential for division and to drag up conflicts that had been at least pacified or at least improved for decades. And it's incredibly irresponsible. It just shows it's another example of this kind of demagoguery and irresponsible leadership. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear to be improving in the near future. Now, there are lots of efforts being made on the ground at grassroots level among the communities from both sides of that whole political divide within Northern Ireland. There are decent people trying to do their best to coordinate, and to help bring their younger people in off the streets again and to stop the fighting. But it's made incredibly difficult by irresponsible and somewhat irrational leadership. And
is this leadership in both countries? The Irish leadership, 2 of them, and the British leadership?
Well, I would say that the Irish leadership have. Yeah, and I don't want to sound in any way partisan, but this wasn't a choice of the Irish government. It wasn't. Nobody here wanted Brexit to happen. Now, there have been issues in terms of how the negotiations have gone with the European Union. A lot of members of the UK government and amongst the more extreme unionists within Northern Ireland have focused on this effort of the of the European Commission to use the Northern Ireland Protocol as leverage within negotiations around the pandemic and around access to the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, this is a decision that was overturned within 3 hours once the Irish government heard about it, and Michel Barnier, the chief negotiator for the European Commission, also shut this down right away. But it's been seen as an act of bad faith from the European Commission, even though it was never followed through upon.
Wow.
But at the same time, the British government has used this. But at the same time, they've gone against international law twice, where they've agreed something during negotiations around Brexit, and then gone back on it within a few weeks.
So what you're saying is that we have to come back to you because this is hot and it's ongoing. And I want to thank you, David Kitching, for taking the time out of your busy day. And I know you got to get back on the streets and find out what's going on. And we certainly at Muslim Network TV appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now back to Hena Zuberi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amin Al-Din. After the break, we'll be talking about President Biden's policy to use drones in Afghanistan and other foreign countries. We'll be right back after these messages.
So it's nothing extraordinary what we do. It's just a human to human, like brothers to brothers and sisters to sisters. Nothing else, nothing more.
They took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
As the Biden administration assesses the US government's use of drones, a campaign is being launched. On the 12th anniversary of the first protest of US drone attacks, where 14 activists were arrested at the Creech Air Force Base. Since 2009, activists have sustained international protests at numerous military bases while also decrying military and police drone surveillance. To discuss this with us in detail, Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid is in conversations with one of the organizers of this campaign. Back over to our Chicago studios.
Thank you, Hena. Peace activists in America have been concerned for a while about drones. Drones are sort of toys in the hands of kids. You see them in the neighborhood playing with it, and Amazon wants to deliver something. Well, Amazon is way behind. America is delivering death through drones, and it is going around killing people all around the world in different places. Now that President Biden would like to withdraw all forces after 20 years of sort of forever war, longest war in American history from Afghanistan. The speculation is already there that he will enhance the drone program. What is that drone program? That drone program goes around killing. I read somewhere someone from America visited Afghan, and one Afghan youth told them that he, along with some kids, were just going on the mountain to collect woods. You know, this is what Boy Scouts in America do. They go around, collect wood, so cook something for themselves. Well, that is a lifestyle for a whole part of the world where they collect wood for their daily living. And that's where the drone came and bombed and killed several of that boy's friends on the mountain. It's very personal to me because just on the same mountain range as a Boy Scout, I have gone on the mountain collecting wood also. I could have been killed because they cannot differentiate from 30,000 feet high, sitting somewhere in America where nobody can recognize how people in Afghanistan and Pakistan dress. They have seen just Taliban dress in shalwar kameez and just go drop a bomb. Toy in somebody's hand, a killer for many other people. But there are some people in America who are standing against that. They're consistently campaigning. And we have one such peacemaker here who is the organizer of a campaign to ban killer drones. And he has been working on it for a while, and he actually ended up serving 7 months in federal prison because he tried to enter a place with some bread in their hand to tell the army or whoever was flying those drones that this is not a nice thing to do. And his name is Brian Terrell. Welcome to Muslim Network TV, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
You have been focused on drone for a while, and you were arrested at Creech Air Force Base, I guess. Why you have been focused on it for a while? Because you just heard me talking about it, but you have been doing it on yourself.
Well, I've been involved since 2009. Our friends in Afghanistan and Pakistan and other places, of course, knew about the drones, before we did. And we became aware of it about the time that President Obama was making it his a main piece of his foreign policy. And it's very concerning. The way you describe it is pretty much how it works. And the United States program and the UK is a part of this too, have been using this as a way of, it's an assassination program. It's very rarely used in battle, very rarely used against soldiers who are fighting, but it's remote control from thousands and thousands of miles away. Somebody is at, you said, about 30,000 feet above the ground, watching by satellite what they're seeing on the ground and deciding who is a threat. And we've seen it's not only been boys gathering wood. 2 years ago, there were 30 pine nut farmers who were killed collecting pine nuts from 7,000 miles away at 30,000 feet. It looked like they were military people training. I also have a friend in Afghanistan whose brother was an Afghan police officer. And it was the police officers in uniform who were carrying out some kind of program in Afghanistan were identified by a drone pilot in Nevada as being terrorists training. And they killed the police officers that supposedly the United States is training and supporting in Afghanistan.
So you were arrested at air base. So you want to share a little bit about where the air base is? What do they do there?
Well, there are many of these now. Back in 2009, Creech Air Force Base was one of the only places we knew about where they were flying these drones. And now they are all over the United States, and there are thousands and thousands of soldiers, people who are wearing uniforms who are actually flying these planes, but they are 7,000 miles away from the planes they are flying.
7,000 miles away and 32,000 feet high, or higher than that?
I'm not sure how much higher than that they would go, but still they and sometimes they come very, very low, and sometimes they will watch people for days or weeks to determine whether they're a threat or not. I talked to one former drone pilot who feels a very great moral burden for what he's done, and described how he was, when he flies the drone, he's thousands of miles away from the victims, and from his plane, but he's only actually 18 inches away from the war because his distance from his face to the screen. And the first time he was ordered to kill somebody, he had been following these men for weeks, two men, seeing them with their families, seeing them going to work, seeing them go to the mosque. And he didn't see anything to make him think they were a threat, but he knew when the order came, somebody in the CIA or in the military command recognized these people as potential threats, and he had to kill them. And he said he didn't know anything about whether they were terrorists, but he did know they were good fathers. They could tell that.
So tell me, when you and Kathy were arrested, there was bread in your hand. What is the symbolism of this bread taking to people who are flying this drone, killing people abroad?
Well, hopefully the idea of coming with bread, coming in friendship, coming in with something to share, that's a meaning that we're not trying to condemn these young people who are like soldiers all over the world, are conscripted by their poverty, by their life conditions, and to say that we're responsible for this too, and to say we want to sit down and talk with you. And so far, that has not been effectively. It hasn't been answered, but it affects it in our souls and ourselves. What we are coming there, our intention is not to judge and not to condemn, but to speak.
Yes, probably it connects with bread, not bombs type of thing as well. But tell me, how many people have been killed through this drone assassination programs?
That's very, very difficult to tell. Because the actual impacts are in very far away places, away from any kind of media or away from any official people who can do these counts. There have been attempts at making the counts that have been, but we can't tell for sure. But it's been many thousands, and mostly it has been people who are, are civilians, or there have been many times where the United States has claimed falsely that a commander of the Taliban has been killed, and we find out later that it was a working person, a farmer in their field.
You see, because I have been not necessarily in Afghanistan, but in bordering areas where the scouting camps are, as a child and as grown up with friends and all that, people look the same. They dress the same. Even soldiers dress in the same way. Even just like there are a lot of Americans fascinated by guns, in those areas, this is a normal lifestyle to have a gun with them. So how do they differentiate is a real question. Do you think President Biden is going to, now that Afghan is withdrawing troops, active troops from Afghanistan, do you think he's going to rely more on drones to carry on whatever they do?
On Wednesday, he made a speech where he said specifically that's exactly what's going to happen, and he said it's because we need to continue to fight terrorism. But the experts, the generals in the United States military and diplomats have said, in the CIA, people who after they leave their job have said, as Stanley McChrystal, who had been the head of NATO and U.S. forces in Afghanistan during the Obama years, said that for every one we kill, we make 10 enemies, and those are the kind of numbers that we hear. Yeah, so this is not going to stop. You can't stop terrorism by Hellfire missiles being shot out of remote controlled planes. It simply is not going to work. It's going to accelerate the violence.
Don't you think, you're launching a campaign to ban killer drones, but don't you think it is already violating a lot of international laws? You're getting in somebody else's territory. You're killing a person without any military process or any civilian process of determining if that person has done any wrong. So isn't this, is it okay in Geneva Convention to do something like that?
No, it's a violation of all the laws of war. These are in places where, in fact, one U.S. general, he was the head of the chief of the U.S. Air Force Air Combat Command, said that these drones are really good for assassination, but they are useless in a contested situation. And the military should never be in a non-contested situation. It's saying it's useless in combat. So they pick on people, and sometimes they think they know who they're looking for, and sometimes they call these signature strikes where there's patterns of behavior. Again, like these 30 men who were collecting pine nuts in September 2019 who were killed. They were somehow somebody in Nevada or in New York or in Iowa here sitting at a screen saw these men collecting pine nuts and saw they are acting in a pattern consistent with somebody planning some kind of a attack. And of course, as you say, these people who've never been on the ground in these places, they have no idea who they're looking at, but they're trained to look for some potential threat.
Well, I hope they have some extraordinary knowledge to pick these people, because after 9/11, everybody was concerned that there is Muslim community in America need to keep an eye. So I say, well, that's a good idea. So I showed up for a meeting. I asked for a meeting for the Chicago police chief. That, hey, tell me, what type of help do you need? Is it somebody in my neighborhood? Of course, the people who did 9/11 has nothing to do with Muslims in America. They came from somewhere else and all that. So he gave me a list of things printed. And I started looking at it. That actually defined me. The guy who goes to masjid often and the mosque so it has all of those things, which shows that a person is faithful, is connected. If you change the word Muslim or Islam or mosque to church, a person going regularly to church, had recently started attending the church, recently started meeting the priest there, and all that, it will apply to everybody. So those type of knowledge is, tell me this. You're looking for international treaty to ban these things, but you're saying it already violates international laws. So do you have a sample treaty which you're looking for, or what that treaty would look like?
Well, I think a few things have inspired us lately. There's been a ban on landmines, which the United States is not a signature for, but because this ban is there, the number of landmines being produced in the United States is almost zero now, because it's raised the sense of opprobrium that these are disgusting weapons. So even if people don't sign on, and just in January, the international ban on nuclear weapons went into effect. And of course, the United States, none of the nuclear nations have signed, but it raises the awareness and it helps build, hopefully, a the political situation necessary to make these changes. This ban will not be an end in itself. Like you say, it's already illegal. Just like landmines were illegal, nuclear weapons are illegal.
Hey, but tell me this. I mean, landmines. You had the star power of Princess Diana behind that. I mean, you don't look like from Hollywood. So tell me, there are some recently released prince and princess who are no longer performing for England. Can you recruit some of them to go after these killer drones?
Oh, maybe we could. We have some, no major celebrities like that, but we have some very good people who've been involved in international law, and Mairead Maguire, who's Irish Nobel Peace Prize winner, is very avid with this. So we have to, a reason for this concern now, Wednesday's speech from President Biden saying we're going to be moving more into this. And then we've had the drones are proliferating. And as always, unfortunately, when there's an arms race, the focus is put on the nations that are coming later. For example, nuclear arms, there's more concern about North Korea and Iran getting nuclear weapons than the fact that the United States and UK have had nuclear weapons all these years. Russia, China, and the United States and UK are actually increasing our nuclear arsenals right now. We're all concerned about the people coming later. So what's happening with drones today, and it is a very serious concern that Turkey, that was called a game changer in the Nagorno-Karabakh war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, that they depended largely on drones from Turkey, the Azerbaijanis. And these were, unlike the US drones, these were mainly fighting military targets. But we have these drones coming and more technology where they will be taking the human factor out completely. They're working on drones that would be programmed, for example, to see somebody's face with facial recognition patterns, and lock that into the drone's computers, and the drone would just simply go looking for that person, or the drones be programmed to see the patterns of behavior, that you don't need to have a person in the loop, and there'll be killing going on with no human connection.
Thank you so much, Brian. This is the same good old profiling. They all look the same, right? Tell me this. We're coming to the close to this, but where people can find out more about your campaign?
Our website is bankillerdrone.org, bankillerdrones.org.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. Brian is the organizer of this campaign. And thank you, Hena. Back to you.
Thank you, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Washington, D.C. studios tonight. Thank you so much for watching Muslim Network News. For more shows and updates, visit our website, muslimnetwork.tv. Good night and assalamu alaikum.
Special thanks to our official supporter, Zagat Foundation of America,